Talking about the heavy tea roast.
Kyra from Hemet, what's growing on?
Well, I had some lighting issues, and sadly, my plants they flowered when I wanted them to stay in veg, and now I need to revert them. I was wondering what the best way is to revert my plants back to veg.
Christianity.
No, this could be a serious problem. How long have they been flowering for?
They've been flowering for about 2 weeks.
Ooh, 2 weeks, Horty. That might be too long.
Yeah, I would say 2 weeks is not going to be something that you're going to want to try to revert them. Do you have mother plants, or were you just flowering these right out of seed?
No, they were mothers.
Well,
They're from mothers, or they are your mothers?
They were my mothers.
So how did your lights get fucked up for 2 weeks?
They were
Dr.
just
Duff set a
sitting-
timer.
We were having electrical issues.
Okay.
Sorry about the timer.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
this is the thing. When you try to revert something past 7 to 10 days, it's going to continue to flower and push out little retarded flowers and might not get back to what it was before. It may be destabilized where now it's stuck in a flux situation. If you do want to try to revert it, I wouldn't revert every single one because I think that you are so far ahead that you might as well take most of those and continue into flower and at least get a harvest out of them. But if you do want to try to revert, let's say 1 or 2, what do you think, Cordy? What's the course of action?
The way I would probably revert it is you probably don't have as much flower-type formations near the bottom of the plant as you do near the top, right?
Yeah.
So I would go ahead, personally, I would like hedge trim that
Little
thing,
pruning.
chop the top off
That
so
will
you get
encourage
rid
new
of
growth as well.
Get rid of all those old tops and push the auxins out to the lower branches. Give them a nice vegetative feeding and then put them under like an 18-6 light and see if you can get them to start vegging again. There are genetics out there that are more durable than others. I know that there's a particular one back in the day, about 15 years ago, that my buddy took clones from clones from clones from clones for 2+ years, and it always was the same. Now
until you fed it your root aphids.
There was I never even grew that one, but it was
Really give it to him.
it was like trash plant, but drop the TR.
Okay.
And that was the genetics, and it just did its thing, and it wasn't phased by being. He even would take like clones off of early flowering plants, and it always yielded the same, looked the same. But there's other genetics that once they start to bud, and then you start to try to veg them back out, then you notice that they either don't veg back out, or even if they do, once you take
You have
cuts
mutated
from them,
growth.
you get mutated growth, and you just notice that it's just not as robust as before. Ooh. So it's kind of a crapshoot, 50-50. But like Heavy T said, I would just go ahead and flower them if you can. The ones that aren't as far along as the others within the 2 weeks, like I said, chop the tops off them, cut them back a little bit, feed them some veg formula, and put them underneath some nice bright light for a long time.
What about taking cuts off a plant that far
what's
ahead?
Like the best lighting for them then,
You want a low lighting situation if you're going to try to revert them. You don't want to go take them and put them under a 1,000-watt metal halide. They're going to be stressed from being flipped back and forth. I would bring them out and put them under high-intensity fluorescence like T5s.
Yeah, what kind of lights were they under before they started to bloom?
They were T5s.
Yeah, then just keep them under the
Go
T5s.
back to that, raise them up a little bit to try and get the plant to stretch. If you notice more flower formation, look at the new growth to see if the flowers aren't forming any longer. Some people will even go as far to cut the flowers off.
That's what I would do.
And what do you think about taking a cut and using a hormone like an IBA to try and regenerate it? Or a tissue culture. Talk to Bill Graham and do a tissue culture. You could get that genetic back. If you're able to keep the plant around for even if it's growing deformed and everything, if you're able to keep it around and do a tissue culture, you can pretty much reset the genetics. That's the only way that I've seen it do truly.
Another thing, did you start these from seed?
Yeah.
Have you ever flowered anything from them before?
Yeah.
Okay, so they were your long-standing mothers, and you enjoy those particular varieties.
Yeah.
You could try to get the seeds again. You could like Heavy T said. How many times? Okay, when you sprouted the original seed, did you just use that seed as the mother?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't want to do that anyways because the cuts you take off of that are what are known as C1 cuts, and C1 cuts do not produce as well as C2 cut, which would be a cut from that.
But before you go any further, Kyra and the listeners, you're going to try to write this all down, and it's great information, but remember, it'll be up for re-listen tomorrow. But go ahead. Give her all the info as tight as you can.
Basically, every time you take a clone from a clone, you add a number to it. So a mother plant, the first clone is your C1 clone, okay?
Okay.
The C1 clone will not produce as well as the seed would, and 9 out of 10 times will not produce as well as a C2 clone would, which would be a clone off of that first clone. So what we recommend you do anyways, if you're going from seed, or at least I do, when you pop a seed and it grows into it grows into a plant, and you decide that you want to flower something, you take cuttings from that original mother plant and you veg those out and turn those into your mother. You flower the original seed to determine if it's something that you want to keep in your stable of genetics. And if it is, your original cut, your C1 cut, is now your mother.
Is that what you do with your stable? You flower them out
I flower
first?
them out, and then I get new ones.
Yeah.
But your C2 cuts will come off of that original clone.
That's Horty Pippin 101.
And that's where you want to be. So what I would say maybe you want to do is go ahead and take some clones off the bottoms of those plants where they aren't showing any sign of actual flowering. Mm-hmm. Take many, many clones from each plant, and then just turn those clones into your new moms and go ahead and finish flowering out those plants. That way you can determine if those genetics are good. You'll probably see an increase in yield if you're going from taking clones off of the original seed.
Are you having flower formation already? Are you getting pistils sticking out or full flowers out yet?
Yeah. A little bit.
Okay, you need to do it now. Don't wait another day if you're going to try it, just like we said. But don't be surprised if those are not stable going forward. It may take a few weeks. It may take a couple months to try and stabilize them. Stick with it. If you actually can't get the seeds or anything else, go tissue culture. Bill Graham's the man. You can find him on Facebook. At any hydro store, people know who Bill Graham is. He's been in the industry forever. He owns shops in San Francisco. He brought in the fresh filters into the country. He's basically a hydro legend, kind of like Dr. Duff.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that if your plants were seeing 12-plus hours of uninterrupted darkness and then you got the lights back on, you do not want to just go to 24 hours of constant light, because the plants will still think that the next time the lights are going to shut off that it's going to be for 12-plus hours. You need to reset them by giving them the shorter dark times. So when you get the lights back on, you don't say, "Oh my God, they were in total darkness for so much that now I'm just going to put them under 24," because the light doesn't trigger the bloom; it's the amount of darkness. So make sure you do your 18/6 or your 12/1 that a lot of people out there are claiming that they love. But just don't go straight into 24. Give them a small break.
And do it on a rigid cycle. Don't flip-flop back and forth and say, "Oh, I'm going to try and revert them. No, I'm going to put them in a flower. Do this." You're going to be worse off, and you're not going to have anything worth speaking of, or you're going to go hermaphrodite and have seeds.
All right.
And those seeds aren't the ones you want to be popping.
Where do you shop?
Don't be sad, Kyra. You just got hooked up with Grow Info. Where do you shop? Hydro where?
Hydrozen.
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 Are you super zen? Give me an ohm.
There it is.
Yeah.
Kyra, you're going to be saying ohm more often because we're going to help you take cuts. We're going to hook you up with Botanicare's brand new Rhizo Gel.
Booyah!
Their Rhizo Blast and their Hydro Guard. Now, the Rhizo Gel, that's what you put your cuttings in to get the roots going. The Rhizo Blast, once you get that taproot or stalk root, you add that and it's going to be an explosion of root growth. People are claiming it is the closest thing to the old formula of Roots Accelerator on the market. I want you to test it for yourself, Kyra, and let me know. And then to maintain a healthy root system, whether it's hydroponics, soil, cocoa, whatever, the HydroGuard will help do that. It's a singular Bacillus strain that is stable in a bottle, and it's also stable to use in a hydroponic system. All that stuff going to the Hydrozen. Kyra, love you, girl. Stay tuned, okay? Yeah, she has something to say.
Yeah, she did.
Heavy Tea Roasto.
You're listening to DFCRadio.com.